Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Search with Candour, your weekly SEO news and interviews podcast here on Spotify, YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. I am your host, Jack Chambers-Ward, and this week I am joined by the co-founder of Deviation. He is a Brighton SEO speaker and, important to me, a fellow wrestling nerd, Ashley Liddell. We're going to talk about something that I think is becoming a bit of a theme for this season of Search with Candour, and it's search everywhere, which is very much their mantra that they live by over at Deviation, and something Ashley has talked about quite a lot. Basically, ensuring that your content works across social media, across organic search, and everywhere in between, and how much social and organic search relate to each other, that social search element of it. And it's a really, really interesting conversation. I think Ash has got some really unique perspectives from his experience working at Deviation and the kind of strategies they're building for their clients. And it's definitely something, like I said, I've talked about with a few guests here before, including Annie Mae Hodge 2 years ago, Ray Saddiq, I know a few months ago at this point, Jonas Sickler talking about the owned asset optimization side of things as well. I think these all conversations are all kind of connected and tied together, and it's a really, really interesting topic, and it seems to be the hot topic of 2024. So stay tuned for my conversation with Ashley after a word from our sponsors. A huge thank you to SE Ranking for sponsoring this week's episode of Search with Candour. SE Ranking is the company behind the powerful and intuitive SEO platform trusted by millions of agencies, businesses, and SEO professionals since 2013. With a robust toolkit, SE Ranking empowers SEO professionals around the world to excel at executing their strategies. Key features include the Rank Tracker, which provides accurate and up-to-date keyword rankings, as well as the competitive and keyword research tools that offer deep insights into market trends and competitor strategies. The platform's AI-powered SEO insights leverage advanced machine learning to deliver actionable recommendations, streamlining the process and letting you outrank your competition. The backlink checker and monitoring tool enables you to analyze backlink profiles and monitor their status, ensuring you've got a very healthy link building strategy. Earlier this year, SE Ranking released a massive data quality update to the backlink checker tool, so it's definitely worth trying now in 2024. And coming very soon, SE Ranking will introduce the AI results tracking solution that will help you see how you stack up against your competitors in Google's AI enhanced search features. The tool supports you in identifying your rivals in the snippets, analysing their content, and detecting new opportunities for strategic decisions. Click the link in the video description down below or in the show notes if you're listening to this episode. And a huge thank you to SE Ranking for sponsoring us here at Search with Candour.
Sarah here.
And me, Tasmin.
And don't forget me, Jack.
So, gang, what are we all doing here?
Jack, why don't you do the honours?
What an honour. Thank you so much. Drum roll, please.
Sorry, we don't have that sound effect, and unfortunately, my skills just don't stretch that far.
Oh, fair enough. Maybe next time. But we do have some very, very exciting news for you all, because not one, not two, but 3 successful live podcasts. We are back once again. Search with Candour and the SEO Mindset podcast are teaming up again to record a podcast in front of a live audience.
Yes, that's right. And I am very excited. So join us for a raw and authentic conversation about career planning, but without the overwhelm. We'll be sharing practical advice, tips, plus our own personal experiences.
I am so excited, and this is all free to attend. There's going to be pizza, snacks, and drinks included. Again, free. It's happening the night before Brighton SEO. We're starting at 7 on Wednesday, the 2nd of October. Tickets are now up for grabs, and last time we sold out. Well, technically we sold out twice. So if you are interested in joining us, please, please, please grab your tickets now before they all go.
And help us spread the word as well. If you or your colleagues or your friends are going to be in Brighton or attending Brighton SEO coming up in October, the more the merrier. Please all come along and join us.
We'll pop a link in the show notes so you can get more information and grab your tickets. We look forward to seeing you on the night.
My guest this week is a Brighton SEO speaker renowned for talking about social and search, which is kind of the topic of this week's episode. He is also a fellow wrestling nerd in SEO, and we need to talk about that, Ash, for sure. Welcome to the show, Ashley Liddell.
Hello, thank you for having me. And yeah, I am a big wrestling nerd. Was at All In at the weekend, so yeah.
Oh, I went to All In last year, but I didn't manage to go this year. I have stag do's and weddings and stuff happening around this time of year, so I couldn't afford going this year, but I did go last year and I had a good time. But
I'm jealous because I missed last year, to be fair. So.
There we go. I got the big crowd, but you got Bryan Danielson winning a world title, so I'm
yeah, we got to sing Final Countdown, which was cool.
Mate, oh yeah. We could talk about just Bryan Danielson for a whole hour, so we should probably move on to talking about marketing stuff. And I mentioned social and search, and I think it's kind of established yourself as your little niche, your little brand, right? With what your guys are doing over at Deviation, the Brighton SEO talks you've done. I know the topic you discussed with David and the Majestic team for SEO in 2024 as well. I know this has kind of been this really interesting little crossover I've seen from previous guests, and you definitely came on my radar because I've been looking for this kind of thing. And I think this is a growing topic that I think more people need to be talking about. And it's basically how lots of social platforms and social media are essentially infiltrating search as we know it, and there is more and more crossover between social media and organic search than there ever has been before. Do you think that's fair to say as a little intro?
Yeah, definitely. I think we've sort of noticed that over definitely the past 18 months. I'd say it first came on my radar in 2021. I'd say that was really early doors. But yeah, there's platforms, obviously we'll get into it, but the likes of TikTok, the likes of Pinterest, and then other spaces like Discord, Snapchat, Telegram, they're sort of infiltrating search, which is a really good way to put it. And I think they're sort of leading to that democratisation of search that we're seeing at the moment. So yeah, we've sort of picked that up and developed that into our proposition as sort of Deviation, with it sort of becoming off the brainchild of what I'd sort of picked up on taking place across the industry, and yeah, we're sort of running with it. So it's an interesting one for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think the democratization of search is a really good way of putting it, and I know that has been a very hot topic with Google being declared a monopoly recently, and everybody panicking, realizing that maybe, just maybe, in the I guess the worst case scenario for Alphabet as a company, that Google will be forced to diverge and divest a lot of their kind of established stranglehold on much of the search market, especially, and I think this is key, the mobile search market, because of the default search engines for Safari on iPhones, Android, and all that kind of stuff. I talked about the Android selector stuff. I know Natalia Witchik brought up a really interesting point. She got a notification of choose your default search engine on her Android phone. And I was like, that's very interesting. Is that Google heading in that kind of direction? And I think you're totally right. I know your mentality of search everywhere, I think, is particularly relevant because people are searching elsewhere now. It is not just Google, and it hasn't been just Google for a little while. I know I did an episode, this was, again, when it kind of came onto my radar in 2022, was talking about TikTok as a search engine. And then that was a whole debate that happened in the search community. Like, no, it's still a social media platform, but they're kind of, you can still search stuff. And they're now kind of opening up a lot of data and stuff. How are you feeling about the state of it now and how much it has changed over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, that conversation was a thing that happened that caused a lot of people to sort of come across my profile and sort of see me as one of the ones against SEOs almost, because I think SEOs were quite protective over the fact that you needed to hit certain criteria to be considered a search engine, and we were very protective as a space over making sure that those criteria were hit. One of those was the data points, I think. TikTok now and other platforms following suit are giving us access to a lot more of that first-party data, and then third-party tools are able to give us access to more information on the back of that. That means, especially from the data side of things, we're seeing TikTok essentially become, well, I declare it as a search engine already, to be fair, but it's definitely a social search engine if I'm being candid.
Hey, we're Search with Candy. You got to be candid, right?
So I think we're not there yet. We need a little bit more information and a little bit more data, but we're definitely in a better place than we were in 2022 in terms of peeking behind the curtain of TikTok as a search platform. We need more information on search volumes and things like that so that we can start to justify strategies and give insights on what strategies are going to lead to our CMOs and to our clients. But as a starting point and where we are now compared to where we were 12 months ago, even 6 months ago, and then where I expect us to go over the next 12 months, we're definitely going to be there in sort of 6 months, 12 months, especially with AI, which is probably a conversation for another day.
You said the dreaded word, mate. We're going to open up that can of worms. We got 5 minutes into the show before we said AI.
Yeah, I think that's good, to be fair.
That's a new record, I think.
Yeah, especially like this year. But with AI sort of entering the space as well and able to take data and do stuff with data that personally I could only dream of. Like, I wouldn't be able to do half the stuff that AI is able to do. Then it makes it a lot more feasible for SEOs to actually get behind TikTok as a search platform. So yeah, it's a really interesting sort of topic. It's one that I'm looking forward to getting into with yourself, and obviously it's one that we're really embracing and looking forward to working within.
Yeah, definitely. I think going back to Google for a second, I think it's particularly relevant because there has been such a clear shift, and it's kind of two kind of avenues, from one somewhat positive, somewhat more negative in many people's eyes. Their reliance and increase in reliance on user-generated content, right? Thinking about Quora and Reddit being the big red flag there, everybody going, there's too much Reddit on the SERPs, and there just straight up is. Reddit is too high. Reddit is more visible than it has ever been in the history of the internet, which is crazy. I think I was talking to Steve Payne from Systrix the other day, who keeps a really close eye on this stuff and like what's the most visible domains in the US across the world and all this kind of stuff. I think Reddit is now in the top 5 most visible domains in the US. Like,
yeah, I saw a talk by him last week, and he said that. Yeah, he was reiterating that. It's mental, really, and I think the UGC point's a really interesting one because we've talked about that democratisation, and we can get into what's facilitating that. User-generated content is one of the big things that is facilitating that, because previously on a Google SERP, it had been publishers and it would have been brands that were sort of leading the way in terms of the SERPs. Reason being, you had to have at least some web dev knowledge in order to put a blog live and get content in front of Google. And then you had to have SEO knowledge in terms of giving Google the signals to rank that content. Whereas, yes, Google's systems got better at identifying, okay, they're talking about this, so we should rank them on this SERP. Creators have basically found ways where they can just create content on a Reddit, on a Quora, on a TikTok and all these other platforms where there is no high barrier to entry. They can just go and answer a query or put a question on a forum, and they're contributing to the search conversation, whether they realise it or not. So I think the increase in UGC comes around because the platforms are making it easier than ever to contribute to those conversations. B, there's probably a legal thing around the Reddit conversation and Google sort of having high interest in serving.
Yeah.
And then finally, Gen Z and millennials, and again, we'll probably get into this over the course of the hour, but they are searching for user-generated content. They want content from other people as opposed to publishers and brands, so that makes that content more important in terms of showing up on the SERP and then showing up on social platforms as well. So it's not a black and white answer. I think we are really stuck in that grey area at the minute, and it's just about navigating that and finding where we can put our strategies and our brands within that grey space.
Yeah, 100%. I think that grey space is a really good way of putting it, because it feels like we're heading, or almost Google was kind of predicting we're heading towards this tipping point of UGC where they wanted to highlight things like Reddit and Quora and all that kind of stuff and shine a light on authentic, genuine, first-hand experience and expertise, tying into all of the WEAT kind of stuff that we talk about so often in SEO and so often on this podcast. But then we also have things where, like you said, I think Gen Z, Gen Alpha, the younger internet users are looking for that more authentic side of things as well. I come from, but at the time we're recording this, I'm 33. By the time this podcast comes out, I'll be 34. My birthday is between recording and release. And I feel very old on the internet now. And I used to feel like I was very on it, and I'm perpetually online. I feel like I'm fairly, aware of what's going on a lot of the time. But there has definitely been this shift, and especially as a content creator, now I'm putting these out on YouTube and creating social clips and all this kind of stuff. I'm now very aware that people want this kind of more raw, less polished kind of vibe to a lot of their content. It brings that, like I said, expertise and first-handed experience without giving you a lot of the corporate crap on top of it, essentially. And I think I am totally guilty of then, in the old school mentality of overproducing my content and making sure it is super slick and quickly edited and all this kind of stuff, whereas actually just someone talking to camera and being heartfelt and honest about their experience with this product or their experience with this particular brand or company or whatever it is can really resonate with people. And I've noticed that shift just as a content creator myself over the last couple of years. And I think a lot of brands, exactly as you were saying there, are seeing that similar shift towards getting things like honest testimonials, video testimonials, seeing those kind of like short videos appearing on the SERPs more and more, whether that's YouTube Shorts or TikToks or even Instagram Reels sometimes. There's that real kind of, I don't know, like clamoring for authenticity and actual real people talking about real things rather than hi, I'm a representative brand and I think my product is the best brand and product ever. Da-da, like, you know what I mean?
The typical nobody talks like that type content.
Exactly.
If you've seen that meme, yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's an interesting thing from Google's side of things, and this was something, again, talked about a few months ago, but it's kind of dipping its toe into with perspectives, right? The web filter that they introduced and it's still testing at the moment, where it specifically highlights social content and brings in things like X and Instagram and all that kind of stuff. I'm fascinated to see if that is a further commitment by Google, or this is now kind of, they've seen so much backlash from the Reddit sort of things, they might dial back on it. How are you feeling about the kind of state of Google perspectives at the moment, how that kind of ties into the social search combo?
It's the way I saw it initially was that gives us a touch point on a traditional Google SERP, which then means we can go into the likes of Search Console and the likes of analytics and essentially start to justify the content that we're creating on those other platforms via the ways that we have done previously or historically, which means it should be easy to get our point across to a CMO, to a brand team, a social team, whatever it is, because we're essentially using the insights that hopefully, and as I've seen at most brands, they're aware of. So it signals that they're aware of. We can say, oh yeah, this is ranking number one, and brand teams, social teams typically know what that means. Or we can say the click-through rate on a Google SERP is X, and they understand the value of that and get that. So whereas the social platforms at the time of me developing our proposition, they didn't quite have that yet. It meant that Google were giving me that indirectly. So perspectives was really important in terms of how we develop our strategies. To follow that as well, it's this idea that not everybody is heading to TikTok as their first touch point or Reddit as their first touch point. Some users, older millennials like ourselves, we're probably still heading to Google to take our search because that's what we've always done. But then if we're greeted with social content, we're not probably adverse to clicking a TikTok and we're not probably adverse to clicking a YouTube. So if there was that perspectives filter, that is almost like that entry to social search to those older millennial audiences and to the older users of the internet to then get them into what is happening on social search. So for me, perspectives was really important. I think, as you said, Google have recognised that. Is it everybody kicking off about the SERPs, or is it SEOs kicking off about the SERPs?
Excellent question, mate. Excellent question.
So they've recognised definitely that the SEO industry is kicking off about the SERPs, and they still try to appease us, fortunately. So there has been that slight move away from where perspectives has sort of changed to being, I think they're calling it forums now and testing it as Google Forums, as what was perspectives, but it's moved on to that. And all the forum content comes under there now with the social content, but I still think they'll double down on putting it in the SERPs because it's another click that users have to take where they're having to click through to a perspectives feed. Whereas I think from a Google standpoint, it makes sense for them to be putting it on the main SERP because of their vested interest, rightfully or wrongfully, on the main SERP. Because at the end of the day, they want to see Reddit grow because they've now got a financial tie to them. And again, that's probably wrong and it will probably get investigated. But for the short term, that's going to be the case. Long term, I think it's a good place to have it. I think it should be potentially as a separate feed, and it'll allow Google, it'll allow SEOs to test that feed and see how that resonates with users. And then if something deserves to be part of the main feed because it's getting tons and tons of clicks on a perspectives feed, it can then come over to the main SERP. But as you say, we'll go with all users are complaining about the Reddit situation and seeing Reddit links on a SERP. And if they are, then they're going to have a negative experience on Google and then they're going to turn to other search platforms. So it maybe makes sense to actually move those Reddit links to a perspectives or a forums feed and then let the SERP be maybe more YouTube content, more TikTok content, and then the brands and publishers that it's always been. Yeah. As opposed to just having it dominated by Reddit.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point you made about the fact that us as the older internet users, as painful as that is to say out loud, the nature of the SERP that we've known for so long has shifted a fair amount. I think a lot of the general fundamentals and best practices still apply as much as they did 10, 15, 20 years ago in many cases. But I think you made a really good point about how even we're not put off by extra social content, a YouTube link, whatever it might be in the SERPs. So integrating that stuff essentially has no negative. You're bringing in a new audience, you're serving a new audience, and hopefully, unless you're a real kind of anti-technologist kind of person, you're not putting off that older generation of like, oh yeah, like I adore the ability to the ability that the SERP has. The SERP feature where it highlights a YouTube and it will cut out the bit that is talking about the thing you want to find out about.
Yes.
So if you're trying to do like DIY stuff, for example, you can tell this happened to me the other day when a shelf in my spare room broke, and I was trying to work out how to measure it properly and get it all and all that kind of stuff. And there were DIY videos where it literally highlighted, here is the 45 seconds you need to watch of this 8-minute video, and it does a little snippet there, and that's all from the chapters and people like highlighting that. I now do this on the podcast as well, so it highlights out the little different topics and sections of the video there. And I think there's an argument for more of that kind of awareness of how your content is being used. And like I said, it's now a conscious decision for me, and I'm thinking as we're recording this, like, okay, I'll call this segment this thing, and then I'll ask the next question to Ashley now, and then that'll be the next segment here, and then put all the timestamps in and all that kind of stuff. Not only is that much easier for the user from watching the video, so you can skim through and find like, oh, I know Ashley had a really interesting point about this thing, I'll skip to 10 minutes in and here it is, or whatever it is. But I think that's also a user experience on the SERPs. And even when it comes to short form content, finding a TikTok that answers your question is so much easier than a wiki how, here in 15 different steps to do this thing, and you're scrolling through and trying to find the thing, and oh, that's actually not quite the right thing, but they kind of thought it was the right thing. And sometimes you'll get social content that just nails it straight away in 30 seconds. Do you think there's a kind of conscious decision there from content creators to be aware of that and how your content can be represented across SERPs and different platforms and things like that?
If there isn't already, there absolutely should be. I think obviously one of the big things we talk about, search everywhere, that is our baby sort of thing. And the idea behind that is connecting these experiences across the search journey so that you can make each touch point relevant at that user's stage, or at the stage that a user takes that search. Whether it's I'm at the inspiration stage, the discovery stage, you've got content that's serving them for that need. There's perhaps a second sort of search everywhere, what could you call it, almost strength there, which is that if we can do that, what you've just mentioned, where we can say, okay, 1 minute 30 to 2 minute 30 answers this discovery type query, and we can highlight that on a YouTube video on the TikTok that we create. Maybe that's a separate TikTok in that case. But then we're also doing it within our blog content. So if we have a blog, we've got a H2, and then we support that with the YouTube video, which is already clipped up and timed up. And then, or maybe we embed the TikTok with it under that section of the blog, which is something we do on our Deviation blogs. That can then start to improve that user experience and make sure that we're actually serving the content to the user at that exact right time at the stage where they need it. I think another interesting point there is Google can do that really easily with YouTube, because at the end of the day, they have that functionality and that capability. It'll be interesting to see if they can start doing that with a TikTok video, because obviously they do it for individual TikTok videos. But as TikTok starts to infiltrate YouTube space and say, right, we're going to go with longer videos on TikTok, which they're obviously constantly testing, will they be willing to do that to a TikTok video and then serve that on the SERP as well? And then finally on that, there's the idea of other platforms as well. So like Pinterest, Discord, how can they manage those platforms to do the same within their SERP? And I think if Google can identify how to do that and develop the technology to enable them to do that, there's no reason why Google shouldn't continue to dominate the search landscape, really, because it's going to become that central point of, yes, the content's served all over, but Google's where I go to find it, as it has done for websites and blogs for forever. It's just that instead of it being on a website, they're going to be serving you a TikTok, they're going to be serving you a YouTube video, which is probably going to be clipped up to the 10 seconds that you need. So yeah, I think it's really important for user experience. I think that, again, that'll help with us saying, well, this 10 seconds of this video is really important. Can we repurpose that elsewhere? So yeah, it's extra insight, it's extra information, and I'd be all over that, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely the same. And I think that's a really interesting point you made about TikTok expanding. The maximum length of a TikTok video seems to just constantly, every couple of months, are like, it's 1 minute, now it's 90 seconds, now it's 3, now it's 5, now it's 15, now it's 30. Like, okay, I don't plan on watching a 30-minute video on TikTok. And for me, again, this is me being old-fashioned and being a person who uses YouTube probably too much, if I'm honest. Like, I go to YouTube for long-form content. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I watch a lot of video essays, 2, 3, 4 hour long kind of things. And if I want I've got 5 minutes waiting for the bus, I'll browse TikTok, because there'll be, I'll watch 10, 20 videos in that space, rather than having to pause that while I get on the bus or whatever, and then do this thing and then all that kind of stuff. It's a different kind of situation for me. And I think you're totally right. The fact that TikTok is kind of stepping into that space, and more importantly for us as SEOs, how Google and search engines will react to that does because it's pretty clear for a lot of social platforms, using the new features or doing something that they are testing or encouraging often results in your content getting highlighted, right? If you launch a new feature in Instagram Reels and you try, suddenly this user is putting polls on their posts. Like, yeah, that's encouraging that, because they want more people to use those features. Exactly. I'd be interested to see how Google's reaction to longer form content on things like TikTok, and the same is true for Instagram Reels, that maximum view length has gone up as well. Do you think that is a reasonable idea, that those kind of long form content from other sources will infiltrate the SERPs, or, going back to YouTube being a monopoly and having a stranglehold, will they hold that back to highlight the YouTube side of things?
I mean, from a search point of view, I think right now it makes no sense for us to create long form content on TikTok over YouTube, for exactly the reason you mentioned, because YouTube's system is far and ahead in terms of, right, we can chapter this up, we know that this is going to get picked up if we transcribe it, or if we add the captions. Google's got the capabilities, YouTube's got the capabilities to bring the searches in for specific sections within my long form videos. So TikTok's functionality would have to be very sophisticated to compete with that straight off the bat. They've shown that they're willing to take Google on and take YouTube on in that conversation. So there's no reason that it can't be, but that would definitely be a big stumbling block for them if they didn't have that capability and that functionality. Obviously, within TikTok, we've got search highlights already. So it could be that when you search, they deliver a search highlight and it's a 15-second section of that 30-minute video, 40-minute video, in which case that would probably be chef's kiss type vibes to that. But I can't see Google moving away from leveraging YouTube videos on the SERP for that purpose, because it's just so integrated and already happening and embedded within the experience that, although from my side of things I'd love it to happen, I just don't see why they'd want to bring extra attention onto TikTok when they've already got YouTube doing the same thing. I think it's probably far more likely that we see it go the other way, where YouTube maybe adds an extra minute to YouTube Shorts and they go after the short form content game rather than TikTok stealing further from the long form game. Because I'm like yourself as well. Like, obviously we mentioned we're both wrestling nerds. If I'm watching a Cultaholic video or a What Culture video, whatever it is, I'm doing that on YouTube. I'm not doing that on TikTok. But then I might see a 15-second Cultaholic clip on TikTok that encourages me to go watch another Bret Hart documentary on their actual platform. So yeah, I think TikTok would be probably better served to really establish itself within that short game, or short form content game, as opposed to half-assing the long form game, because YouTube and Google are just so good at it.
Yeah, the classic whole-ass one thing, don't half-ass multiple things, right?
Yeah, literally. And the thing is as well, TikTok, someone will correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, 100%, but TikTok have been so good at leading the industry in terms of what they're doing feature-wise that it sort of goes against their business model to be copying somebody else. Like, they've done trend after trend of leading the industry. So why then go and copy the industry? Like, just keep leading the space. Don't look to copy.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point with TikTok pushing the industry specifically for video content and social content. Now with so many integrations that TikTok has, I was blown away. We run Search Norwich here at Canada in Norwich. Every other month we run an event here, and Eventbrite notified me that you can integrate and add an event link into your TikTok videos. It's like,
yeah.
What? That's a genius idea. And obviously that kind of ties around to a lot of the functionality with TikTok Shop and that whole side of things, which is again very controversial with TikTok users because everybody hates seeing, as we were saying earlier, generic, oh, I bought this thing and this thing is great. You can buy it here and I'll get an affiliate thing, but don't worry about that because it's so cheap. Actually, the thing is worth £2 and you're selling it for £2. You say it was worth £20 originally, so it's a 99% discount, and even that's not true, which is an age-old marketing technique from long before the internet ever existed.
Yeah, long before the internet ever existed, and sort of frowned upon across multiple industries that do it. Like, they get called out. I think for us Brits, the normal one is sofas. Like, this sofa
100%.
cost this price, and it's never been that price. TV advertising, I'll tell you, it was £1,000. It's never been £1,000. We're now selling it at 450, and it's been 450 for the last 2 years. So then they got investigated, and I think that they're not allowed to do that. Now it has to be at that certain price for so long. Same with Black Friday deals. So it's probably the same that I think TikTok Shop, and we can go into this because I think it's a cool little chat, to be fair, but I think TikTok Shop is getting more sophisticated, both in its functionality as the back end, but also in terms of the products that users and brands are willing to try and sell on TikTok. I think TikTok Shop is probably going to be my big recommendation for 2025. I think, as you mentioned, the ability to put a link within your video. We're SEOs. We love links. We've already mentioned it. But just before we jumped on the actual podcast, we was chatting about links anyway. And the ability to put a shoppable link at the bottom of a video, the ability to put a link outwards is massive. And I think on TikTok especially, we deliver search content and we have that here. And then I'm able to move people down that search journey just as I would on Google historically, but within TikTok in 2 or 3 clicks. So I can make somebody watch that inspiration video, follow it up with a discover video, or an informational video. And then within 2 or 3 videos, I've got them checking out on a TikTok shop. That's massive, to be fair. And I think being able to do that within a social platform is sort of unheard of. So it could be, I think it's a really powerful functionality that needs to be explored further. And yes, historically it's been crap products. Let's put it how it is. They've been crap
it's all
cheap
drop
products.
shipping stuff, right? Like,
drop shipping stuff. I think that we've seen a couple of brands go, yeah, it is, but what if it wasn't? Lux Collective comes to mind straight away, where they've sort of embraced the TikTok live shopping experience and seemingly took their brand to new heights on the back of it. I think fashion brands are going to enter that space. Fitness, protein brands are going to enter that space, and it could become a much more interesting shopping format next year. So yeah, I know we went off on a tangent there, but I think TikTok shops going to be the place to play in 2025.
Let's stick with TikTok Shop, because I think it's a really interesting conversation, something I've not really discussed much in kind of the e-commerce side of things, where it comes to so much we've seen from the shopping feed that we see so often on Google, and obviously the organic shopping is tied in with the paid side of things on the Google search. That's a big factor that I think a lot of people kind of underestimate and don't fully appreciate how integrated the paid and organic results are on shopping feeds. But when it comes to TikTok, you're totally right. The customer journey, the journey to conversion is so much shorter and can be really kind of nicely guided, like you said, from the inspiration, discovery, and the final conversion journey. That sounds like a super, super short customer journey, because we're so used to, like, okay, you got the top of funnel stuff and you're coming through, then there's like 5 or 6 different pieces for top of funnel, then you come through to middle funnel eventually, and that a lot of people misuse the middle funnel. That's a whole other conversation. And then bottom of funnel stuff, most people talk about the kind of really specific stuff, the zero volume keywords, the really like high long tail kind of things that users are searching for, that means they're more likely to convert. With TikTok, exactly as you said, Ash, like just click on the video and then it takes you to a little thing. It flicks up with a little checkout button and you hit the checkout. And if you've already put your card details into TikTok, then you're already there basically, and you can check out within a couple of seconds and then carry on scrolling. It blew my mind how easy it was, because I was testing it the other day, essentially just having to play around with it. I have 2 cats, and I own like one of those little corrugated card cat bed things, and I searched for this regretfully on TikTok, and now every third bloody video is someone trying to sell me one of these new little, incredible, my cat is so comfortable on this amazing little cat bed. And weirdly enough, I was talking to my wife about this, who also uses TikTok. She's the one that got me onto TikTok, and we were talking about how weird and old-fashioned some of the TikTok shop practices feel like. Some of it just feels like QVC back in the day. Yeah. For those young viewers and listeners out there who may not know what the hell I'm talking about, there were entire channels. I think they're still around probably, but nobody watches TV these days.
They're like 5 a.m. jobs now, aren't they?
Exactly. Yeah. Like, you'll get this great deal on your set of sponges and knives for your kitchen. And it does exactly as you're saying earlier with the, like, it used to be £400. Now it's only £25.
Yeah.
Like, okay, great.
And there's only 10 in stock, but they've got a warehouse full of them.
They're selling fast. Get yours now, kind of thing. Yeah, exactly. And I saw a video that was kind of behind the scenes kind of thing of how a lot of the, I want to use the right word here, TikTok shop farm kind of things, where it's just a row of like a few dozen people, all with the classic ring light setup and looking like an influencer, and they're all live on TikTok just selling rubbish, cheap drop ship rubbish. And I think you're totally right. This is where, coming right the way back around to what we were talking about half an hour ago at the start of the episode, that authenticity and the actual real experience of brands, the real expertise of brands, hopefully then cuts through all that noise, and you can actually get your product in front of people who may not even know what your brand is, who your brand are, and that's a whole new audience for you to target, right?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of interesting things that I picked up there. Firstly, around the idea that you watch one video and then that leads to 2 or 3 being served because of the way the algorithm works. On that really quickly, that's one of the biggest advantages of social search over traditional search, in my opinion, because we know as SEOs, ultimately, our journey cannot start until someone takes a search, and then it cannot continue until somebody follows up with the second search or the third search, if we're treating SEO as a siloed activity. Social search now gives us this capability of, right, the first search happens here, and this is the content that we're serving. We might not need our users to take that second search because TikTok's automatically going to show them more of our content because they've watched our first video. So then we can serve them the second video, we can serve them the third video without them ever needing to take a search, which I think is super, super powerful.
Yeah, it's a more passive rather than active kind of thing. Like you're able
exactly.
Almost like sneak in front of people's faces rather than being like waiting for them to discover you.
Yeah. Because as well, we know that it could be a week, it could be a month, it could be 6 months between the searches taking place. We sort of accept that they're going to happen, it's going to happen. But again, as we talked about TikTok speeding that process up, because of the way the algorithm works, we can reduce that time it takes between touch points and between time taken between searches, which is really cool. So that was the first thing. And then the second thing is around brands embracing it, being authentic and doing things in the right way. I think, as we see on Google, there's going to be brands that are looking for shortcuts. There's always going to be brands that are looking to do the least amount of work and make a quick buck, and then they'll move on to the next thing. Whether it's buying links, whether it's churning out crap content on TikTok or making it look authentic when there's no real authenticity there. That's always going to happen. I think with TikTok Shop, it wasn't policed in the early days, which meant that it was just given free rein to happen. Now where brands are going to be coming into that conversation and are going to be doing the right things because they've got the support, hopefully, of agencies like Deviation or SEO, wider agency teams or internal teams looking to do the right things, follow best practices. The quality of that content should improve as a result of that, which means that the crap content, it's still going to be there as it is on Google, but it's not going to resonate because people are going to know that they're going to start to see through it and know that that's crap content. So, yeah, brands are going to have to display the right things, display the best practices to take advantage. But if they can do that, I can't see any reason why they can't be successful on TikTok Shop. We've talked about Lux Collective being one of the early examples of brands that do that right. They're a really high-end sort of fashion sort of brand that do that. It's going to be interesting to see what happens when the likes of a Primark enter the conversation, if it's going to be Primark, a River Island, an ASOS. It'll be interesting when them brands start to enter the conversation, because as much as, yes, it's great, Lux Collective are on the platform and I love them as a case study, but you're asking somebody to spend £450, £1,000 on TikTok Shop. So there's still a little bit of consideration there. It'll be super interesting when love them or loathe them, a Boohoo, a Shein, are present on a TikTok Shop and people are just spending £3 on a summer dress and doing that in their droves. That'll be when I think we'll start to see the potential of it and seeing how brands can actually turn up in the space, to be honest. So yeah, there was a couple of things that I picked up from that I wanted to highlight.
Yeah, definitely. I think that movement towards, like, I'm surprised the fast fashion, like you said, the Shein and all that kind of stuff, haven't kind of nailed it on a bit more and kind of really, really oversaturated. Maybe it's because I'm really not the target audience for that kind of stuff. I am a older, overweight guy who is interested in like ethical purchases and stuff, and that is totally not my bag. Maybe I'm just not the audience for that, but I have not seen much of it, and I think it's very interesting. Like you were saying, when you see this kind of shift from brands, I think a lot of people think about, oh, we'll get our products on TikTok. People think of paid ads, because TikTok ads is a whole other conversation and a whole other side of things. As I mentioned with the Google side of things, the shopping feed being a combination of the paid options and the organic options kind of sprinkled in there. Like you said earlier, that passive nature of just scrolling and kind of something popping up for you, that is so different to how Google works because of the active nature of searching for something, and because Google specifically diversifies the SERPs, or claims to, at least, Reddit not considered, but they make a concerted effort to not rank the same domain twice in the top 10, for example.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've got site links and you've got all the extra like little SERP features and stuff, but as a raw 1 to 10 first page Google experience, you don't tend to see the same domain ranking twice.
Agreed.
Otherwise, you would get a massive brand that just completely dominates, or like a huge household name, and nobody has any chance of getting anywhere near the first top 10 spaces, right? When it comes to the TikTok side of things, it just takes one search, like I said, for cardboard cat bed. I'm using my real life example here. And I am not quite bombarded, but there is a very, like, me going in with my marketing brain switched on, right? Thinking like, okay, is it going to be every...
I know what you're doing here.
3 videos? Is it going to be every 5 videos? What's the ratio to like... pissing me off and putting me off the brand to actually getting me to buy something? Be like, okay, fine, I'll cave. And I find it very interesting, like you were saying, with the side of things with the old school sofa type guys, where they have like, oh, this has to be a price for this particular, like, has to be a set at this price for a month before you can say it's discounted. I found every time I click on a TikTok thing, they will say one price and be like, oh yeah, this new cat bed is just £2. And then I click on it and the checkout says $9.99. And I'm like, what the? That's not a huge amount of money, but that's still 5 times the price you promised me. And I think, again, coming back round to where these brands, where that price is far more set in stone by the C-suite people, the CMOs and the financial people who are deciding this sort of stuff, you don't get Primark prices that just change from one click to the next. They're pretty stable. So I think, in a way, that stability, which sounds kind of counterintuitive in many ways to, again, old school marketing stuff, might actually prove useful and as a positive thing. So you're not seeing that constant typical dropship flip-flop kind of price change.
Yeah, agreed. And I think there's an element there as well of when people are using TikTok Shop at the moment, they're getting told, oh, if you haven't, this might be one that you saw on the videos you watched, if you haven't ordered off TikTok Shop yet, this is going to cost you X. If you're an experienced TikTok Shop user, it's going to be Y. And that, again, is people leveraging the drop shipping thing to be like, you can get this cheap product even cheaper because TikTok are going to give you a discount to encourage you to use the platform. So I think, again, once the majority of users have gave TikTok Shop a go and that goes out the window, and we add to that brands will talk about that in a specific way, such as 10% off your first order, like we do on websites and things. The call to actions will become more sophisticated, I guess is what I'm trying to say. That'll improve the situation as well. I think the main thing is, at the moment, the content creators are sort of been given free roam to just sort of do what they like, it seems. And I'm sure that some of those content creators are just drop shippers and then they're acting like content creators as well. But when the brands enter that space, they're trying to protect a brand long term. So they're not going to be able to do those shoddy tactics. And again, as I said earlier, when the brands enter the space and improve the quality of content, that'll hopefully push the QVC style stuff to the end. Again, if you haven't spent loads of time on TikTok, you might not have seen it, but there's Asian content that I get served, and it's basically a woman in front of the QVC style desk. She's got products all around her, and she literally brings it on for 2 seconds, gone, and brings it in for 2 seconds, and you don't even get to see the product. And she's making millions just going like this, and then the product's gone. And
we're in the wrong job, mate. That's what we need.
Yeah,
to do.
like literally just stood there moving it on. If they get 5 seconds, that's cost them more, and then they're moving it on. Again, like that needs to stop. We need to be essentially taking the best of e-commerce and our solutions from our websites and Google, bringing that to TikTok and leveraging the best of TikTok. And I think if we can do that, TikTok Shop is going to be that powerhouse. And then real quickly before we move on, the thing you mentioned around paid being integrated within the organic on Google, I think TikTok's announced recently that that's going to start taking place within TikTok Shop so that you'll have the paid ads displayed. So that'll be super interesting if they're able to leverage their algorithm so that it knows, again, I'm a big Represent fan. So if it knows I've engaged with Represent content on the actual organic, then I come to TikTok Shop and it starts serving me paid Represent ads. That would be super, super cool. So it'll be interesting to see how that matures over the next year.
There's a whole other conversation that we don't have time to get into about the remarketing nature of this and the whole paid ad side of things.
Yeah.
But I think something to really kind of focus in on that you mentioned there, and I think it's a bigger part of the conversation we've been having, but we often talk about, and we kicked off the whole episode talking about how much TikTok is pushing the way forward and social platforms are influencing how much user-generated content we're seeing on the SERPs and all this kind of stuff. And then you just said it just there, and it kind of like clicked in my brain. When we see brands move over and bring some of the e-commerce stuff to TikTok that, again, has been so established over the last 20 years of searching for stuff on the internet, it's then for want of a better phrase, the Google, the search engine, the organic search side of things influencing the social platforms. And I think that's something not that many people really talk about. We mostly talk about the other way around, again, as we started the episode with, where it's the young cool kids on the social media influencing what everyone's going to do. But actually, some of the best practices and the fundamentals and the kind of basics of e-commerce stuff can really help you. They're basics for a reason. They're fundamentals for a reason. There's a reason why WooCommerce and Shopify and so many other CMSs have incredibly similar functions for so many key elements, because they work, because they drive conversions, because they get people to buy stuff. And because we haven't really seen that on the social side of things, I think that's a really interesting way of turning on its head and having I hate to say this, old-fashioned marketing of organic search then influence the social side of things, right?
Yeah, I think that's essential. It's got to be a both ways thing. We've got to take the best of what's happening across platforms. So if something's really working on Snapchat, but we can utilize that elsewhere, we steal that and we take that and we put it on what we're doing on TikTok. Email marketing, the same. If there's something that works on email marketing that all of a sudden that has capabilities on social search or on traditional search, we'd be silly to just leave it to an email marketing thing. Let's take that and borrow that and put it together. And I think that is, again, another facet of that search everywhere sort of proposition that is now getting my brain sort of ticking, is we talk about how we connect the dots between the platforms. And it has very much been, okay, it's connecting social search to traditional search. But actually, there's maybe an opportunity for us to talk about how and hopefully it's come across in this talk, how we take the best of what's happening on traditional search and connect that to that journey just as much as it happens vice versa. So, yeah, you've made me start thinking of something there. That's interesting. But then I think as well, it's like we talk about the best practices. So if we just take one and we talk about eat, social search is sort of built to evidence that because of the things that we've spoke about over the last sort of 40 minutes in terms of creators can show that first-hand experience, they can demonstrate their expertise. That then allows them to build and display that authoritativeness. And then as a result of all three, they develop that trustworthiness. So it's not taking away from what creators are doing on TikTok and saying, the SEOs are here now, mate, we're going to take over. It's saying, look, if we're a brand, we can do this and we can do this properly and we can, for want of a better phrase, we can make a lot of money off doing this properly, which obviously is, as much as people stay away from that conversation, that's what brands care about. If we go to a brand and say, look, we're going to do TikTok SEO and we're going to make a shit ton of money, then they're going to be all over it. So yeah, I think you've definitely got the brain ticking there with a few things, and it's not just social search and coming from traditional search. It works as a two-way relationship.
Yeah, definitely. It's something I talked about with Ray Saddiq a few weeks ago when we talked about Ray had a brilliant strategy of taking a lot of like ideas from forums, like you said, even places like Discord and Snapchat, places you wouldn't really think of, and getting content ideas that then influence the stuff you're making for want of a phrase, you're making for organic search, the stuff you're putting on your blog and your website and stuff like that.
Yeah, Ray's awesome. I've followed Ray for a while. We've had a few good chats, to be fair. We're quite similar-minded in how we approach things. And yeah, definitely check Ray out, because the way that he's not replacing's the wrong word, but essentially amplifying keyword research with what it does alongside that stuff is really cool, to be fair. And I think that again is a chat for a previous episode in this case, but it's interesting to see how the social search elements can amplify the traditional search to improve the content that we're putting out. A real quick example would be if SARS guards, for example, SARS charts. It's so annoying. I hate when I go on a website, click SARS guard, and it's just a load of numbers, and I don't know what any of them mean, and I ain't got a clue.
Yeah.
Yeah, if there was a TikTok there of, I wear an extra large, this is how it fits, I'm 6 foot, and it was a content creator walking me through what those numbers actually meant, then that'd be a really useful piece of content. So then maybe it's improving our user experience on the search pages with those sort of stealings from social search as well. So yeah, I think amplifying our keyword research with the social stuff, whether it's forums, whether it's the zero search volume stuff, whether it's trends, which is an interesting one as well, is just as vital as the other stuff that we've been speaking about in this episode, to be fair. So check out Ray's episode.
I'll put a link for that in the show notes. It'll be a card up here somewhere on YouTube if you want to go and check that out. If you're listening, I'll put it in the show notes so you can go and check it out. And I think the organic channel alignment side of things that Ray and I talked about, I think is massively relevant to what you guys are doing at Deviation, the search everywhere kind of thing. Is there a particular kind of, I guess, like starting point for a lot of your strategies? Do you go in with like, okay, we've kind of gone through the, for want of a better phrase, traditional keyword research kind of things. I guess it's a lot about having conversations with that brand and understanding where their audiences might be, or maybe even introducing them like, did you know you're very popular on Instagram? It's like, oh no, we didn't even realize.
Yeah, it's a little bit of all of that, to be honest. I think if we take the keyword side of things first, we start with a keyword universe, which would be based on the traditional keywords. And then we make that a universe by mapping the keywords from social platforms to those traditional keywords. So whether it's hashtags, whether it's a slight difference in how you'd search for something on TikTok over Google, we're mapping those to that existing keyword research. AI is getting really good at helping us with that. Beyond that, then, the other side of the conversation is we go to brands and we say tools like Glimpse, tools like Exploding Topics, tools like Google Trends, they give us insights into where it's called the channel breakdown if you're used to Google Trends, and we'll focus on that one specifically. We can get a channel breakdown, and that'll say where a search term is popping off, where it's over-indexed or under-indexed. So we will typically put our brand terms within that, so that we can see, oh, actually, brand X are really popular on TikTok, because we've been speaking about that for the majority of the episode. So we'll go to the brand and say, look, there's loads of people searching for you on TikTok, and you're leaving the conversation to UGC. There's no reason why you can't be going and contributing to that conversation as well. And then it's about us then saying to a brand, okay, we've identified TikToks where your brand is really popular. Here's the keyword universe. This keyword's really popular on that platform because tools like Answer the Public and then first-party tools are now giving us insights into search volumes and hashtag uses and all these good sort of awareness metrics on what content we should be creating. And then we'll go and say, okay, let's do a brief on this piece of content because we've got evidence that it's popular on the platform. Once we've put it out on one platform, we don't just rest there. We try and improve the ROI for every piece of content that we do. So then we'll repurpose that for YouTube or for Instagram because it's a TikTok. So it makes sense to repurpose that as a YouTube short and as a Instagram reel. And where possible, we'll embed that into the blog. So I spoke about earlier how if we've got a blog with a H2 on that, there's no reason why we can't embed that video within the blog as well and sort of improved the user experience of our blog. And then all of a sudden, we've got content across all of these multiple touch points in a really connected way, because essentially it's the same sort of end goal. We're moving people through the content in a similar way. We're moving it to the next touch point. And because we've repurposed it, it's all come from one budget, which is nice for the client too. So yeah. And then after that, it's essentially, okay, what's the metric look like for this? How do we sort of evaluate success? At the moment, that's share of search and revenue. So if we put a piece of content live on Oasis tickets, or Oasis Parkers, whatever it is.
Speaking of hot topics.
Yeah, they literally, So if we've put a piece of Oasis content live now, and the brand hasn't discussed Oasis previously, we know that any sort of success that comes on the back of that is a direct result of what we're doing with our content. If there's a 5% increase in brand search on the back of that, which we'd evaluate as the brand term plus brand plus Oasis outfits, or brand plus Oasis, whatever it is, then we can go to the brand and say, we've grown your share of search by 5%, 6%, 3%, whatever it is. And then hopefully over the course of a year, that becomes 15, 20% growth brand search over the course of a year, which would then have revenue attached to that. And then finally, it would be if we've managed to push people onto a landing page that's led them to convert, we'll report on that as well. And CMOs hopefully are going to be happy with the results that we give them on the back of that. So that's sort of a beginning to end of our process a little bit as quickly as I could.
Nice. I think that's a really interesting, like the repurposing of content. I think is so key to making sure it works on each platform, but still feels, again, genuine and authentic to the original brand and all that kind of stuff. This is something I am very conscious of when I'm recording this podcast and then editing the podcast and putting it on different platforms and experimenting with different options and all this kind of stuff. I think a lot of people underestimate, and it's something we very briefly talked about before we started recording, is the link building side of things as well. And I think
massively, yeah.
This will be a nice thing to end on, because a lot of my chats with our digital PR team and our content team and our link building team here at Candour, a lot of it will be talking about what's popular on socials right now. What's this thing? Like, not just the typical journo request reactive PR stuff, although that has its value and its merit.
Yeah, definitely.
I think, like you said, analyzing trends, being aware of what's being talked about on one platform but has not yet reached another platform, for example, or finding an audience that seemingly nobody has noticed, can be a huge part of, again, coming back around to what Google says so often about links and stuff, that fresh, innovative, first-hand experience with something where you are the first person to talk about something because you're the person that spotted that trend. That is a hugely powerful thing to get covered by journalists, get covered by publications, and then get those links organically as well, right?
Yeah, massively. And I think that wasn't ignored when we was developing the proposition for this. I mean, for those that have never met me or never seen me before, I previously worked at Rise at 7, and anyone who knows Rise at 7 knows that digital PR is their bread and butter sort of thing. And Ken Wright and Carrie were always massive on the content marketing, being able to go and then get coverage. I think what we're seeing now is that shift to where our social content, just because it's on a social platform first, doesn't mean that it can't be building links for us, whether that's organically or whether we outreach social content. So again, we used the Oasis example a few minutes ago. With the Oasis example, the first brands that we're talking about, these are the best tips for you to prepare to buy tickets. There was on a Google set within the news features.
Yeah.
They were like, that's news, and it was on top of the SERP, even above the organic listings, and then it's below that as an organic listing. All of a sudden, you give yourself topical authority over that conversation, and you build brand affinity, because whoever it is, if it's me, for example, who wanted to know, okay, how can I prepare my Ticketmaster account so that I can get Oasis tickets? That brand, which I think was Highsnobiety to start with. I think I could maybe mixing up my publications, but they was there, went straight in, saw that content, and I'm going, okay, like they've helped me thingy, that bookmark, that tab, that's going to be helping me get my thing. So not only are they getting that link there, but they're also getting that slight sort of brand awareness. Ticketmaster follow suit. Ticketmaster put a best practice guide on how to prepare your browser for their own platform. And it's like they were second or third to the party, but they're building links on the back of things. So I think with our social search content, there's no reason why you can't be outreaching to niche publications and saying, we are seeing this trend popping off on this platform. We're talking about it as we insert brand name here. Feel free to, here's some statistics on it. So it's a 1,000% increase in searches on TikTok for Oasis outfits. If you can then outreach that to those niche publications, whether it's a Adidas blog, whether it's a Stone Island community, whatever it is, then you're going to be building links. And obviously that links back to that digital PR and link building conversation all the same. So yeah, digital PR is going nowhere. It's just going to evolve and change on how we actually go about building those links and where those links are pointing to. Because it could be that you're actually not too concerned with getting a follow link, but you're actually more concerned with getting a brand mention because of what you're doing on social search. So definitely an interesting conversation there.
Yeah, definitely. I think that kind of ties us nicely and wraps it all around into that fully integrated content strategy, right? Whether you're, like we said, thinking about the link building and the content marketing side of things, but also tying that into the social side of things. And then there is the splintered branches of all the different social platforms there. So you're thinking about all the different options. You very briefly mentioned email marketing, which is a whole other conversation, and again, very relevant there, and something we've been experimenting here with our core updates newsletter and how that ties into the podcast content and how that ties into Mark's LinkedIn content and how it all ties together and repurposed and all that kind of stuff. I think all brands and all agencies and marketing teams in general need to be thinking about this fully integrated strategy for content going forward, right? But do it now or get left behind.
Yeah. Literally, yeah. I'd say we alluded to it earlier with the idea of siloed SEO team and then having to convince brand, social set, whoever. I
don't know if you noticed, I did a little roll of my eyes when you said that. I was like, consider SEO as siloed. I'm like,
yeah. I think we're at a stage now where actually the brands that can move past those silos and actually have brand team, social team and SEO team, them three in particular, working together as a digital unit, they're the ones that are going to exceed expectations and grow rapidly. I think the ones that we see that are doing this are the ones that are having that success. And from our side of things and from my observations in the 6 months or 5 months that we've existed, our conversations have been so much easier with clients or potential clients when those silos don't exist. When those silos do exist, it's hard to convince an SEO to invest in social content, and it's hard to convince a siloed social team to get behind search content. And then finally, the brand team are going, well, how is this actually going to influence brand? Whereas the brands where they've had that interconnectivity, they've been a lot easier to work with, to be honest. So, yeah, goal for 2025 would definitely be break those silos down and embrace being a one digital team that has capabilities across all 3 or 4 of those functions.
100%. Couldn't agree with you more, mate. Absolutely. I think that's a really relevant piece of advice for, as we come, terrifyingly, as we come back towards the end of 2024 and heading into 2025. I think that is where we need to all be. And if people want to keep up the conversation with yourself, follow you on various social platforms and keep up with what you guys are doing at Deviation, how can people follow you across the wide array of platforms across the internet?
Yeah, so all this talk about holistic search, and actually you're best to find me on just LinkedIn, to be honest. LinkedIn as Ashley-Liddell-SEO, that's definitely where you'll find me. And then Deviation, I would say start with the website. All the social links are on there. We tend to put out webinars on the website and then social content on the back of that. So they'd be the 2 main ones.
Awesome. Links for both of those will be in the show notes and video description, listeners and viewers. So if you want to go and check out, follow Ashley, follow Deviation and what those guys are doing with social search and search everywhere, please do go and follow them on the links down below. Thank you so much for joining me, Ash. It's been a lovely, lovely conversation. Really interesting. Like I said, literally like sparked extra thoughts in my brain as we were talking. So always appreciate that. Thank you for joining me, man.
No worries. I appreciate the time. And as I say, I appreciate you sparking a few thinking points for myself, to be fair.
And that concludes another episode of Search with Candour. Thank you so much to Ashley Liddell for joining me. Like I said, I think it was a really, really interesting and engaging conversation all about how social media and organic search tied together. If you have any thoughts, please do let us know. You can comment on the YouTube video. You can comment on Spotify now as well. If you have any questions or any thoughts you'd like to share with me or Ashley, please do so in the comments below. Of course, if you'd like to support the show, which I would hugely appreciate, please like the video, subscribe to us on YouTube, leave comments and all that kind of stuff. Review us on Spotify, review us on Apple Podcasts as well. I would hugely appreciate the support and help spread the word and sharing and Search with Candour around. Because I think, like I said at the start of the show, I think this is a very important conversation to be having. I think it is incredibly relevant and seems to be a running theme for a lot of my guests this year as well. We're all thinking about how SEO relates to the other channels around marketing and within marketing. And I think more people need to be doing that going forward. Anyway, I will be back next week with another fantastic guest and another interesting topic. Stay tuned for that coming up next week. Until then, thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching, and have a lovely week.